Rain needles the runway in unbroken sheets, flattening the night into silver noise. Emergency strobes pulse along the asphalt, then smother out, then pulse again, measuring time like a failing heartbeat. Henry Cole lies crooked near the paint-striped margin, jacket darkened, one palm open to the weather as if weighing the storm. Beside him, Rex Canine limps through the water glare, jaws clamped on a black briefcase whose edges are slick with other people's desperation. The dog's breath steams, falters, surges. Jet fuel lingers from somewhere unseen, a clean chemical ghost over wet soil and old rubber. Far beyond, a private hangar sits like a quiet mouth. Closer, tire marks arc and shiver under the rain, beginning nowhere, dying at Henry's boots. The night tastes metallic. A distant transformer hums. The briefcase lands against Henry's fingers with a muted tap. The dog nudges once, steadies, then angles its guard toward the fog, reading the dark for movement. Sirens smear across the horizon, not approaching so much as remembering how to. Their blue washes on low clouds and gutters into the grass, a promise without reach. Rex Canine circles tight, planting a shoulder against Henry's ribs to hold in the warmth that the rain keeps trying to steal. The runway's centerline throws back fractured reflections, each dash a white bone under glass. Wind eddies plastic from a forgotten chalk, skittering it past the still form of a navigation cone. The briefcase waits between man and dog, like a hinge the night is turning on. Henry's breath returns in thin threads, counting what the lights refuse to count. Somewhere beyond the service road, a chain-link fence sings. The dog's ears pivot, locate, discard, locate again. The airport sleeps, like something pretending. On the far apron, a beacon turns, patient and cold, as if clocking loyalty itself. Rex lowers its head to the case handle and braces for another pull.
Metal remembers louder than flesh. The vault door, earlier, closed with a concussion that crawled into Henry Cole's bones and set up residence. The echo hung in the bank corridor, riding the fluorescent flicker, then followed him all the way here as the muffled twin of turbine growl. Before the rain, before the red dress, there was a keypad that sparked when routine fingers found it, a lock cylinder that seized and let go like a held breath. A maintenance ticket was stamped, filed, and ignored by the afternoon. Inside the vault, cash lay stacked as if it could weigh down doubt, neat edges promising order to a life already flaking. Henry's caution added checklists to checklists, then ran out of places to write. In the memory now, he watches his reflection warp across the steel curve, watches time fold and crease. The door seals, the room exhales, and the distant airport answers with a throaty, rising whine. Fog slicks the runway verge, moving with the confidence of something that knows the ground. A figure in red interrupts the monochrome, a vertical wound in the weather, one arm lifted, fingers carving frantic shapes in the air. The color catches every strobe and sends it back bruised. Henry's eyes find it the way a compass finds north, slow and inevitable. The silhouette stands near the metal gleam of a private jet, stairway down, mouth of the cabin unlit. The fog accepts and returns sound, heels against aluminum, fabric against fabric, a sharp intake like a match struck. Rex Canine stops mid-step, claws splayed for purchase, nose tasting propellant, skin reading the electricity of ambush. Far behind them, runway lights fall in sequence, as if clicked by a metronome that means harm. The red becomes nearer than the sirens, larger than the rain, brighter than the beacons. Somewhere between beacons and breath, the night opens its lure.
Silence takes shape in the space between pulses. The lights pause, and the airport feels like an empty lung waiting to decide. Henry Cole's vision narrows to a tunnel of cold brightness framed by wet black, every sound stitched to his pulse. The briefcase rests against his thigh with the weight of an unmade choice. Memory slips its anchor. The runway glides backward.
The rain slows to beads hanging in air, and a clock from earlier ticks inside his ribs where minutes used to be. The world tilts, blurs, and settles into a fresher night where the grass was longer and the darkness less practiced. He is not yet bruised, not yet bled, not yet hunted by a color. A lap downfield burns steady, haloed. The fence hum is softer. The air carries the thin, milk-sour breath of a frightened animal. The present loosens its grip. The past lifts its hand. The story inhales, then falls into the beginning. The night is younger here, a different decade folded beneath the same fog. A small shape limps along the gravel margin of the abandoned runway, ribs sharp under matted fur, eyes rimmed with pale fear. Headlights sweep once, then steady. The engine dies. Henry Cole steps out, younger, drier, a man still in possession of patience. Rain glances from his umbrella, ticking like second hands. The animal's body trembles at the sound. Henry kneels, coat open, the warmth of his breath drifting across cold air. The puppy's flank rises once, then hesitates, uncertain of mercy. Diesel hum fades to heartbeat. A distant hangar claps shut, wind-trapped. Above them, a beacon blinks its slow arithmetic across the clouds. He slides the creature into his coat, feeling the small weight surrender. No words, just the hiss of tires leaving the shoulder, and the night swallowing both silhouettes, a man and a half-formed guardian learning the sound of rescue.
Morning discovers them in the kitchen's low light, steam breathing from a dented kettle, the world shrunk to the smell of antiseptic and bread crusts. Rex, smaller than the thought of danger, lies on a folded towel while Henry wraps gauze around a leg too thin to promise survival. The air outside carries the dull hum of an early freight train and the distant calling of gulls that never see the sea. Henry's hands move without ceremony, a rhythm he once used on paperwork, now serving something alive. Blood blooms faintly through the bandage, red softening to rust. The puppy blinks, trusting by exhaustion. On the counter, an old wristwatch ticks, its beat aligning with breath, with kettle hiss, with a future still sleeping in both of them. Light creeps through the blinds and splits his reflection across the glass jar. Man, animal, and the thin shared filament of persistence. Heat lies on the road like a skin when the serpent crosses. The air quivers, dry as flint. Henry's steps crunch the dirt shoulder, Rex bounding ahead, tail slicing sunlight. The run is routine, the shortcut between bank and cabin, the path of habit that time never edits. Then a movement breaks the geometry, scales sliding across gravel, a whisper inside wind. The snake uncoils from its shade, copper turning to blade, its hiss threading through the hum of summer insects. Henry freezes, one heartbeat late. The strike gathers, tension at the hinge of silence. The shepherd meets it midair, a blur of muscle and command. Dust erupts, sand scattering like applause. The world compresses to sound, snarl, impact, sudden stillness. When motion returns, the serpent lies folded wrong, the dog panting, blood and sunlight smeared together. Henry drops to his knees, palm trembling on fur. Survival smells of dirt and trust. Evening drips back into the scene like slow ink. The snake's trail dries to a faint scar on the gravel. Henry sits in the cabin doorway, Rex stretched beside his boots, the rhythm of breath sinking to the hush of cicadas. A kettle clicks off inside, ignored. The briefcase from the bank rests near the chair, unopened, the day's paperwork sleeping behind its brass latch. The air holds that post-storm clarity, the kind that makes reflections too sharp. He watches the dog's flank rise and fall, the scar already sealed by instinct, and feels the fatigue of borrowed safety. Somewhere inside, a radio whispers local news no one will remember. The last line of sunlight stutters across the dog's collar, flashing once,
twice, then disappears with the sound of crickets resetting the dark. Henry closes his eyes and lets the silence measure what gratitude sounds like when spoken by absence. Now the years have circled. The rain has returned. Henry Cole opens his eyes on the same runway where trust was first found, only this time the horizon has teeth. The fog breathes closer, dense and electric, memory and present folded into one soaked reflection. The strobe lights resume their pulse, counting something older than seconds. Rex stands at his side, older too, the wound of that summer long turned into muscle. The smell of jet fuel overlaps the memory of antiseptic. Somewhere beyond the fence a red flare ignites, and for a moment Henry cannot tell whether he is moving toward it or away. The night hums with unseen engines. The briefcase, wet and heavy, presses against his leg, not burden, not treasure, simply consequence. When the next flash comes, the field turns white, erasing shadows, erasing time. And then the light pulls everything backward, like memory rehearsing itself again.
Morning filters through the vertical blinds of a small-town bank, flattening dust into luminous threads. Henry Cole arrives before the clocks reset, his tie already creased from ritual. The hallway hums with air conditioning and fluorescent flicker, mechanical calm that masks decay. Each step toward his office traces the same map: counter, vault door, break room reflection, clipboard check. Routine keeps loneliness disguised as discipline. Rex Canine waits outside in the street's thin shade, leash looped on a parking meter, watching glass doors with the patience of devotion. Inside, Henry balances ledger sheets that never surprise him. The clock hands move like reluctant jurors. Somewhere in the corner, the surveillance monitor flickers, one frame stuttering to snow before returning to static order. Habit holds him, but the screen has already recorded something it shouldn't. He writes another figure, feels the pen drag, and tells the silence to behave. Outside, Rex lifts his head at a sound only animals trust. By late afternoon, the building exhales fatigue. Ceiling vents whisper recycled air. Printers click their tired metronome. Henry enters the vault chamber, list in hand, gaze measuring stacks of notes like weight on conscience. The keypad blinks its calm green, then flares to red. A spark leaps from the metal edge, a pulse sharp enough to taste on the tongue. The faint smell of burnt dust lingers. He resets, tries again. Same refusal. Machines don't rebel, they hint. The door seal vibrates as if something inside breathes. For the first time in years, he feels watched by his own equipment. In the reflection, the overhead light draws a white bar across his glasses, slicing his eyes in two. Paper rustles in the corridor, an employee leaving, unaware of the small fracture beginning in Henry's perfect system. He notes the malfunction with steady penmanship, unaware that behind this spark hides the fuse of his undoing.
The maintenance log reads like a prayer for order. Names, numbers, timestamps that promise control. Henry's voice on the internal line sounds routine, calm, procedural, a banker reporting inconvenience. The reply from Central Repair is delayed, thin with static, ending in the promise of next week. He writes the date on a yellow slip, pins it to his notice board beside older warnings that never mattered. Sunlight slides across the office floor, warming the edges of forgotten memos. Behind the counter glass, a junior clerk laughs too loud. Life continues uninvited. Henry adjusts his cufflinks, masking irritation with formality. Outside the window, Rex K9 yawns against the rhythm of passing traffic. Every tick of the wall clock draws the vault's image tighter in his mind. The red blink, the short spark. He files the memory away like evidence. Paper dust drifts upward in the stale air, settling on the face of a calendar that has stopped turning. Evening finds the lobby empty, but for the low drone of refrigeration in the teller drawers. Henry double-checks the vault from the camera room, an old habit born from sleepless caution.
The screen trembles faintly with the analog heartbeat of outdated circuits. Frame by frame, fluorescent corridors roll past. Nothing. Nothing. Then a shadow in maintenance gray moving too slow to belong. The name tag reflects only a smear of light. Henry leans closer. The monitor blurs as if embarrassed. The figure pauses near the keypad, fingers tracing patterns not on the repair checklist. Then the tape skips. 3 seconds vanish, and the shadow is gone. The air in the small room thickens with ozone and self-doubt. He rewinds, replaying the absence. Outside, the first thunder of the season whispers against the glass, promising a storm big enough to erase footprints. On the street, Rex shifts restlessly, sensing the echo of intrusion before reason catches it.
The next day, order resumes its disguise. Bank doors open, phones ring, pens migrate across counters. Henry's world clicks back into place, polished and fragile. He stands at the window above the main street, the vault's hum faint behind him. Below, Rex sits unmoving in the heat haze, a sentinel carved from sunlight and patience. Customers drift through, their small talk blurring into static. The briefcase waits on Henry's desk, ordinary, obedient. Yet every glance toward the corridor brings the memory of that slow shadow looping behind glass. He tells himself it was reflection, mechanical lag, a trick of frame rate. Still, when the elevator dings, he flinches half a breath early. The malfunction report lies stamped and filed, but its corner curls upward, whispering in paper language. Outside, Rex lifts his head again, eyes fixed on the horizon where the airport sleeps under thickening clouds, waiting for the next signal in the sequence. The sky lowers itself over the city in a seamless gradient of graphite. By closing time, thunder has retreated, leaving only the soft scrape of tires through puddles. Henry Cole locks the glass doors, the click echoing too loud in the empty bank. Neon from the corner diner trembles across the floor tiles, turning the marble veins red, then white, then red again, heartbeat colors. He straightens a crooked chair, as if that gesture can repair something larger. The briefcase, now heavy with cash and silence, waits by his leg. Outside, the dog's reflection stares back from the dark window. Rex Canine's outline wavers in the neon pulse. Habit carries them both toward the car, down the same road that spills into the airport perimeter. The shortcut feels earned, like a private permission from time itself. Wind presses hard against the windshield. Somewhere ahead, the first low blink of a beacon begins its slow count toward nightfall.
Gravel hums beneath the tires as the road narrows into the private access lane that runs beside the airfield fence. The rain hasn't returned, but humidity clings, smelling faintly of iron and jet fuel. Henry lowers the window an inch. The night carries in a taste of electricity and grass. He can see the runway lights through wire mesh, stretching like a coded sentence. Rex sits upright in the passenger seat, ears triangulated toward sound no human registers. The car moves in careful increments, headlights diffused by fog. Every few seconds, a moth collides with the glass, then disappears into darkness. The engine noise blends with distant machinery, low turbines idling for a flight that may never leave. The shortcut has always been empty, yet tonight its emptiness feels deliberate. Henry kills the headlights for one silent stretch, measuring the dark by memory, feeling it push back with quiet intention. The runway opens like a blade through the fog. Moist air glows faintly from sodium lamps half consumed by mist. On either side, grass ripples under invisible engines. Henry slows, tires whispering over painted lines while Rex leans forward, nostrils widening, hackles lifting one cautious ridge at a time. Somewhere beyond the hangars,
A metallic clang rings, followed by silence too abrupt to be innocent. The briefcase sits between them on the seat, unlatched but closed, a container of trust or temptation, or both. As the car rolls to a stop, the fog parts enough to show the faint outline of a private jet. It stares down, its windows blind. A flare of red moves near the nose, small at first but then urgent, human-shaped. The engine idles, the air stiffens, and Henry feels the repetition of his life shrink into this single recurring image, a stranger at the edge of light asking for help.
Rain resumes with the conviction of memory catching up. It arrives in clean, diagonal strokes, each drop lit for a fraction before annihilation. The figure in red stands still now, one hand raised in appeal, the other gripping the stair rail of the private jet. Her hair clings to her neck, catching strobe reflections like embers. Henry cuts the engine. For a moment, silence gathers enough weight to be mistaken for safety. He opens the door. Sound rushes back in, a full orchestra of wind and mechanical hum. Rex growls low, a vibration more than a sound, his gaze fixed past the woman, deeper into the fog where movement stirs without shape. The briefcase slides against Henry's knee as he steps onto wet tarmac. Each footfall answers the light's rhythm. The woman's mouth moves, but the storm steals her words. What reaches him instead is the pulse of engines preparing to choose sides. Closer now. The woman resolves into the living echo of that first red blur, the lure perfected. Her face is almost unreal in the runway shimmer, eyes wide yet oddly steady, fear rehearsed into art. Rain purls on the sleeve of her dress before dying against his coat. The jet looms behind her, polished skin breathing reflections of light and movement. She gestures toward the cabin, the universal language of emergency, and Henry's instincts fracture between compassion and caution. Rex doesn't move. He stands planted, reading the air, muscles tight with verdict. For a moment, all sound dims, replaced by the ticking of a wind gauge spinning aimlessly. Somewhere under the fuselage, something metallic scrapes, a second pair of feet. The scene holds its breath on that noise. Then the flare dies, leaving only the runway's mechanical heartbeat and the quiet certainty that help is never the real invitation.
The woman's outline trembles as another strobe flashes, her raised arm frozen between plea and command. The distance between them shortens. Each step Henry Cole takes echoes like a question he can't withdraw. The rain needles harder now, turning the ground slick enough to mirror his approach. Her face tilts toward the hangar lights, mouth open, eyes tracing something over his shoulder. Behind him, Rex Canine's claws scrape once against the wet asphalt, a warning drawn in sound. The air smells of fuel and deceit, two scents too similar in stormlight. The jet hums, soft as breath against the metal hull. Henry reaches the bottom stair and feels static jump from the railing to his fingertips. The woman's eyes widen, but not at him. Reflex pulls him half around toward the shadow that has been waiting for its cue just beyond the wing. The silence between beats fills with a sound like air being cut. For a fraction of a second, the scene arranges itself into symmetry. One man, one woman, one dog, one machine. Then the order collapses. From the far side of the jet, a shape in dark clothing breaks free, momentum already aimed. Miles Dorn emerges, low and quick, movement trained and practical. His face catches a blink of blue from the rotating beacon. Recognition flickers in Henry's memory before logic can chase it. The briefcase swings by its handle, almost weightless in this new gravity. Rex lunges, teeth bared, sound slicing the air like alarm sirens trapped inside muscle. Henry's boot slips on the rung, catching him mid-turn. The woman steps aside, her expression no longer fearful, only coldly observant. The geometry realigns. Predator, prey, witness. The first shout never forms.
Thunder edits it out. All that remains is the wet percussion of impact and the metallic cry of something precious leaving human hands.
Somewhere inside the storm, meaning disassembles. The dog's leap lands a half-breath late. The briefcase tears free, vanishing upward into a blur of motion. Henry stumbles backward onto the slick tarmac, the world contracting to his pulse, and the light strobes that refuse to synchronize. Miles vaults up the jet stairs, body a shadow stitched by lightning. The woman, Clara Voss, turns her face away, but not in horror, in calculation. Rain threads her hair into fine wires. Rex claws at the stairs, metal ringing under his weight. The turbine fans cough once, spinning ghost air that smells of ozone. Henry's breath rasps, mouthful of iron taste. The jet door gapes wider, a wound promising escape. Somewhere deep inside the machine's belly, a red indicator light begins to blink, rhythmically marking each misstep of faith. The dog doesn't hesitate. The man can only watch the outline of loyalty disappearing into manufactured clouds. Rex Canine is airborne again, this time in pursuit of theft rather than threat. His claws strike the stair metal, the sound cutting through the drone of awakening turbines. Miles glances down, startled by speed that seems almost unnatural. Teeth find fabric, then flesh. The briefcase jerks loose, somersaults, lands open on the tarmac, currency and rain commingling, indistinguishable under emergency light. Clara flinches, not at pain, but at the plan unraveling. Henry rises slowly, watching the choreography of violence through the blur of water and memory. The jet door slams from within, engines build a low growl that carries no intention to depart. It's camouflage for panic. Police sirens shimmer faintly from beyond the perimeter fence, a promise stretched too thin. Rex tears once more, releases, turns, and drops back to ground level, carrying the case by its handle, like an article of faith. The sky chooses this moment to burn itself white.
Light returns in fragments, filtered through steam and smoke. The jet remains still, engines idling without destination, its body reflecting chaos like a mirror of bad memory. Clara Voss kneels on the wet asphalt, palms pressed against her face, not from remorse, but from shock at failure's texture. Miles Dorn lies slumped near the stairs, clutching a leg dark with spreading heat. Rex stands beside Henry, ribs heaving, water sliding off his coat in narrow rivulets. The briefcase rests between them, seal bent but intact. Beyond the chain link, sirens multiply, approaching with measured authority. Henry feels the edge of exhaustion rather than triumph. The storm quiets enough for new sounds, boots striking pavement, radios hissing code. The runway lights flicker once more in descending sequence, as if counting down to stillness. In that hush, Henry's gaze finds the dogs, mutual recognition, unsentimental, old as weather. The night begins to rewrite itself toward dawn. Wind ripples across the soaked airstrip, carrying the taste of burnt fuel and wet steel. The sirens that had promised rescue dissolve into distance, swallowed by fog and exhaustion. Henry Cole stands still, the weight of soaked fabric pulling at his shoulders, the briefcase heavy, but somehow irrelevant now. Rex Canine prowls a slow perimeter, body low, tail stiff, scanning the motionless jet. Somewhere inside, a light flickers off, then on again, a pulse without pattern. Rain tapers to mist, making the night seem closer, smaller, almost manageable. But nothing about this feels contained. Henry's breath steadies, becomes the only rhythm left. He looks toward the service road where help should have appeared minutes ago, and in the silence that follows, realizes it may have been a phantom sound. Sirens imagined by a mind desperate for symmetry. The air smells of conclusion, yet the story refuses to settle. Something unseen is still moving.
The fog rearranges itself into walls, dissolving distance. A noise surfaces from within the jet's belly, a hinge, deliberate and slow. Miles Dorn reappears in silhouette, hand braced on the doorway, eyes too aware for a wounded man. Blood runs down his pant leg, but defiance steadies his frame. He takes one step onto the stairs, gun visible now in the flat light. Henry doesn't move. Rex freezes, watching, silent. The rain, held for a moment, resumes in a fine, unwavering drizzle. The runway lights blink in deliberate rhythm. 5 on, 3 off, pattern of emergency. Miles's voice never reaches the air, stolen by weather. Only the gesture translates, the muzzle aimed low. A command in muscle language. Henry feels the press of inevitability, the weight of cause folding back on itself. The gun lifts a fraction higher. The dog shifts stance, calculating. Then, for a split instant, all three share the same reflection in a puddle before impact erases it. Sound and motion collide into blur. The gun discharges into the night, recoil swallowed by thunder. Rex explodes from stillness, the world narrowing to muscle and teeth. The first leap drives Miles backward. The second breaks his balance completely. The stairwell clangs, a single bright chord of metal and violence. The weapon clatters away, spinning, vanishing beneath the jet's frame. Clara's scream pierces once, thin and brittle, quickly undone by rain. Henry runs forward through the echo, each footstep a deliberate refusal to surrender. By the time he reaches the stairs, Rex stands atop the fallen man, jaws clamped, eyes burning with a strange, clear certainty. Blood, man's, dog's, or Storm's, runs down the metal steps, diluted into anonymous pink. Above them, the jet lights extinguish one by one, cabin to cockpit, until only the navigation beacon remains, circling, marking this patch of Earth as both victory and cost.
The wind shifts, scattering the fog sideways like curtains. Through the opening comes the first glint of blue, police strobes flickering against low cloud. Their sound lags behind, a memory arriving late. Henry steadies against the stair rail, chest rising in deliberate tempo. The briefcase, recovered and closed, lies on the tarmac beside a trail of diluted color. Rex releases his grip, turns toward his owner, stance unsteady but proud. The world exhales. The jet's turbines wind down into an animal sigh. Clara kneels motionless beside Miles' body, mascara diluted into abstraction. Henry lowers himself onto the wet ground, exhaustion and relief sharing one shape. The sirens finally breach the fence line, red-blue blending with white runway lights, a temporary truce of colors. In the downpour's hush, Rex collapses against his leg, heartbeat syncing with the old man's pulse. Between them lies the rescued briefcase, heavier now for everything it cost to keep. The perimeter fills with human motion, uniforms, flashlights, cameras that flash once and forget. Officers fan out across the tarmac, their voices absorbed by fog. Detective Sarah Lang steps into frame, coat drawn tight, eyes already mapping the scene's geometry. Her gaze finds Henry, then the dog, then the briefcase, assembling narrative from aftermath. Steam rises from the jet's wings, rain becomes drizzle again, gentle as aftermath should never be. Lang signals medics forward, their gloves pale against the darkness. Henry sits where they find him, eyes on nothing, rain tracing his jawline. Rex lifts his head once, meets Lang's stare with animal comprehension, then settles back into stillness. The radio chatter fades to white noise. Somewhere beyond the field, dawn stirs without conviction. The last runway light flickers out. For a moment, the silence feels deliberate, a breath held by the world before deciding whether to release or remember.
The dawn that follows looks bleached, too calm for what it reveals. Yellow tape flutters along the runway's edge, anchored by cones that tremble in the wind. Detective Sarah Lang moves carefully through puddles, notebook sealed in plastic, eyes fixed on the vault blue briefcase balanced atop a forensic crate. Around her, technicians comb the asphalt, collecting fragments of a story that still refuses to align. Henry Cole sits in an ambulance doorway, blanket over his shoulders, skin lit by the soft, indifferent gray of sunrise. His expression belongs to someone listening for a sound that isn't there. Rex K9 lies nearby on a wool tarp, chest rising shallow but steady. The siren echoes have faded into the distance. All that remains is wind and paperwork. Lang glances once toward the jet, its silver body inert, then back at the old man, as if trying to decide which of them is the true witness. Later, in the bank's empty halls, yesterday replays itself with surgical precision. Henry's shoes track faint streaks of dried mud along polished tiles. Security lights blink the same dull rhythm as before. Detective Lang stands by the open vault, gloved hand tracing the keypad's rim. Microscopic scratches shimmer under ultraviolet light, patterns too deliberate to beware. She photographs them in silence, the flash bleaching away the dust of neglect. Henry watches from the doorway, posture rigid, a man seeing his caution turned into evidence. The air smells faintly of ozone and old paper. Somewhere in the distance, a copier hums like a machine rehearsing guilt. Lang lowers her camera and turns toward him. No words pass, only the shared understanding that order has been a mask all along. In that pause, Henry finally exhales, and the vault door seems to breathe with him, heavy, metallic, and newly honest about its own vulnerability.
Outside, morning expands into clarity so sharp it borders on cruelty. The bank sign catches sunlight, throwing brief flares into the quiet street. Rex walked beside Henry, a faint limp softening each step, the bandage on his flank already turning the color of old linen. Passers-by slow, drawn by the animal's poise, the hush that travels with them. Henry keeps a steady rhythm, as if routine could still protect him from reflection. The briefcase rides in his grip, locked, lighter now, yet weighted by unseen residue. At the crosswalk, he pauses, feeling eyes on his back. Nothing visible, just the prickle of being observed by a world still writing footnotes. The city hums, uninterested, but recording. A bus mirror flashes their image, man and dog, silhouette and echo. In that reflected instant, the two look almost mythic, survivors mistaken for symbols, trudging through the ordinary morning toward a truth that doesn't need witnesses. The airfield remains sealed, a shrine to procedure. Investigators sift through wreckage fragments under a washed-out sky. The private jet squats mute on its wheels, cabin dark, windows blank. Inside the hangar, technicians label metal shards and blackened upholstery. Detective Lang walks the perimeter, recording coordinates, listening to nothing but wind through chain link. The odor of burnt insulation lingers like an accusation. Her pen moves without hesitation, but her eyes betray fatigue, the look of someone piecing together a puzzle that resists edges. In the distance, Henry stands beyond the tape, hat pulled low, watching as if the scene might confess on its own. Between them lies the strip of tarmac where loyalty left its mark, a rust-brown stain dissolving into rainwater. Cameras click, radios mutter. Somewhere overhead, gulls circle, fooled by the glint of aluminum. The world insists on documentation. The truth continues to prefer its silence.
In the sterile quiet of an evidence room, time stops pretending to move forward. Fluorescent light pools over labeled bags, currency damp from rain, scraps of red fabric, a single bent cartridge. Detective Lang studies each without expectation, the way one listens to static for hidden code. A technician slides a folder across the table.
photographs of vault mechanisms, maintenance schedules, a signature looping into familiarity. The name Miles Dorn repeats across pages, creeping backward through years of service calls. Lang's pulse sharpens. The sabotage wasn't improvisation, it was rehearsal. The same man who engineered the vault's failure orchestrated its exploitation. She sets the photos aside, gaze drifting to the blurred background of one frame. Henry's reflection in a bank mirror, unknowingly recorded beside the saboteur's. Two figures, decades apart, now occupying the same truth. The realization lands with no drama, only weight. Outside, rain begins again, as if cued for emphasis. Evening blurs the edges of the crime scene into watercolor. Floodlights bleach the airstrip, their beams cutting through mist like surgical lamps over a patient that won't wake. Technicians are packing up. Generators cough a tired rhythm. The jet's fuselage glows a faint ghost silver, half disassembled. Henry Cole lingers at the margin of motion, a silhouette against mechanical brightness. Rex Canine rests beside him, one ear twitching at each sudden clang. Beyond the perimeter, Detective Lang speaks into her radio, voice low, deliberate, blending with static. When the wind shifts, the scent of burnt fuel returns, a phantom replay. Henry closes his eyes, hearing the turbine's hum become a remembered heartbeat. The world appears repaired, evidence logged, statements taken. Yet the scene's symmetry feels wrong, too clean. Somewhere beneath the tarmac surface lies the echo of what doesn't photograph: fear, loyalty, and the arithmetic of choices that never balance. The lights continue their pulse, demanding an ending.
Detective Lang walks the long corridor between containment tents, cataloging fragments of confession. A medic hands her a sealed envelope: toxicology, trajectory, weather pattern, facts shaped into comfort. She signs without reading, gaze snagging on the runway beyond the canvas flaps. Henry waits there, coat drawn tight, the tired geometry of survival outlined in silhouette. The dog's head rests on his knee. The two share an almost monastic stillness. Lang approaches, stopping short of intrusion. Words would ruin the architecture of what's left. She studies Henry's space, the blankness of someone who has seen cause and effect collapse into each other. The storm begins again in miniature, raindrops pattering against plastic roofs, each one echoing the ones that fell during violence. Lang nods once, a gesture both farewell and acknowledgement. The old man nods back, just enough to close a circuit. The scene breathes out. The paperwork will take years. The moment is already fading. Night pulls its curtain. The airfield empties, leaving only hums of unattended machines and the smell of antiseptic. In the quiet, Henry stands at the ambulance door, watching medics wrap Rex P9's flank. The bandage gleams under flashlight glare, white against the dog's dark coat. The vet murmurs instructions to an assistant, motions without sound in Henry's world of muffled thought. He touches the animal's ear, feeling the slight tremor beneath fur, the steady resilience. The runway, stripped of urgency, feels almost sacred now, an altar of consequence. Behind them, the private jet's shell sits inert, wings catching moonlight like folded hands. Henry senses the weight of many eyes now gone: police, press, bystanders, each having taken a piece of truth with them. What remains is simple: man, dog, night, and silence thick enough to reshape memory.
The world shrinks to the rhythm of machinery, an IV drip clicking, a heart monitor's distant beep. In a temporary field clinic, Henry sits on a metal stool beside the recovery table. The smell of disinfectant erases the scent of rain. Outside the tent, tires crunch gravel. Somewhere someone laughs, a sound that doesn't belong here. He watches Rex's breathing, the rise and fall measured, almost mechanical. Nearby, the briefcase leans against a chair leg, latched, dried, anonymous. Henry could open it, count its contents, prove its importance, but the idea feels absurd. Value has shifted scale tonight. He studies the dog's paw twitching in dream or pain, uncertain which. The monitor blinks in soft rhythm, the same pattern as the runway lights fading in his mind. When the vet returns to check vitals, Henry has already memorized the sound of survival, a quieter frequency than guilt, steadier than thunder. Dawn edges the horizon with a thin silver thread. The clinic tent is dismantled, folded lives packed into crates. Henry steps into the pale light, shoulders stiff beneath a borrowed coat. The rain has washed the tarmac clean. Only faint stains remain, diluted into gray memory. Rex walks beside him, slower but upright, bandage marked with the night's residue. Detective Lang waits by her car, clipboard under one arm, coffee steaming against the chill. She nods toward the runway, then toward him, a silent question he answers with silence. The engines of arriving vehicles rumble, bureaucracy arriving to replace tragedy. Henry looks once more at the empty air where the jet had stood, then at the far fence line where fog collects like withheld breath. The case is closed. The world demands sequence again. He turns toward his cabin road, the dog following. Behind them, the lights blink once more, then surrender to day.
Days fold into each other until they stop needing names. The cabin sits where it always has, timber darkened by rain, smoke curling from the chimney in narrow strands. Inside, air holds the faint musk of antiseptic and old coffee. Henry Cole moves carefully, adjusting to a quieter gravity. Rex Canine sleeps near the door, healed enough to twitch at every rustle of wind against the porch. Outside, the forest breathes slow, its wet leaves whispering the past back into shape. A truck passes on the distant road, dissolving into silence. Henry sits by the window, polishing the clasp of the same briefcase, now emptied of currency, but full of echoes. He doesn't open it anymore. It's a relic of obligation. On the wall hangs a photograph, two shapes in rainlight, man and dog beneath an impossible sky. The room smells of ash, damp wool and memory, the ingredients of recovery no one can teach. Detective Sarah Lang arrives unannounced, her car tires crunching the gravel with professional patience. The forest absorbs the noise as if recognizing its visitor. Henry opens the door before the knock lands. No greeting, just shared fatigue masquerading as courtesy. Inside, light filters through unwashed windows, layering dust motes over both figures. Lang places a folder on the table. Paper edges curl like spent leaves. Inside, photos, statements, the tidy aftermath of chaos. She doesn't explain. The gesture itself is explanation. Henry nods once, reading none of it. Outside, Rex sniffs the air, tail giving one hesitant sweep before stilling again. Lang studies the cabin's interior, the ordered clutter of a man living inside routine as penance. On her way out, she pauses by the threshold, gaze catching on a brass dog tag hung from a nail. The tag gleams once in the slant light. Her nod is softer this time, almost human.
Night draws over the forest like spilled ink. Inside the cabin, Henry sits by the wood stove, its heat painting slow amber across the floorboards. The kettle whistles and settles. Time marks itself in domestic rituals. He leans back, eyes closing, but memory keeps its own agenda. The old nightmare resumes, not in sound, but in image. The snake again, coiled near his boot, its body reflecting sunlight that never fades. Only this time the frame widens. Behind the creature, in the blur of grass, a glint of metal appears. Small, deliberate, a device half buried, its circuitry blinking once before the scene dissolves. He wakes to the sound of rain against the roof, heart drumming the old rhythm. Across the room, Rex watches, head tilted, as though he too has seen what Henry dreamed. The stove crackles, the rain softens, and in that intersection of warmth and dread, understanding finally sharpens its edge. Morning brings confirmation, disguised as calm. Lang's call crackles through the landline, her tone stripped of ceremony. The forensic report traces the snake's venom residue to a controlled specimen, not a wild encounter. Lab-bred, handled, planted. The earlier attack wasn't random. It was rehearsal, an experiment in prediction. Henry listens without reaction, eyes on the window where fog ghosts between trees. Lang's words continue, naming Miles Dorn's network, the maintenance cover, the staged malfunction, the designed pattern of coincidence. He hears her, but doesn't need to. The puzzle has already completed itself inside his silence. When the line clicks dead, the cabin returns to its own noises, stove ticking, roof creaking, dogs sighing. Outside, the forest resumes its slow, unhurried truth. The phone hums faintly on the counter, unresolved, but Henry lets it ring into stillness, proof that some revelations arrive too late to matter, and exactly on time to wound.
The bank no longer belongs to him. Its glass doors reflect newer uniforms, younger eyes, fresher caution. Henry Cole steps inside one last time to sign the retirement forms, rituals of erasure masquerading as gratitude. Fluorescent light washes the years from the furniture, but not from him. The manager's office smells faintly of toner and unfamiliar perfume. On the desk lies a brass nameplate already turned face down. He leaves it that way. Outside, the street hums with noon traffic. The world continues its arithmetic of routine. Rex waits by the curb, gray threaded through his coat, the calm of acceptance replacing vigilance. Henry pauses at the doorway, glancing back once, but the reflection in the glass belongs to no one in particular, just a man passing through a memory of himself. He exhales, steps into sunlight. Somewhere far off, an airfield beacon blinks faintly, counting time for those who no longer measure it. Sunset slides across the cabin's porch, gilding the dust and quiet. The forest outside breathes in a low drone of insects and wind, their cadence replacing clocks. Henry Cole sits on the steps, boots untied, watching the slow fade of light through the trees. The air smells of pine sap and distant rain. Beside him, Rex K9 lies stretched on the boards, eyes half closed, chest moving in steady accord. The field below the cabin still holds the remnants of an old path, the shortcut that once led through danger. It gleams faintly under evening mist, a scar healed into landscape. Henry's hands rest on his knees, palms open, waiting for something that will not arrive. Inside, the kettle clicks off, forgotten. The moment holds its own temperature, warm enough to remember, cold enough to understand. Every story has a decrescendo. This is his. The light thins, the first star appears, and still they do not move.
Later, darkness thickens, but the room glows with the low orange of a single lamp. The cabin smells of tea and wood smoke. Henry threads an old cassette into a battered player, one relic among many, and presses play. Static murmurs, then a woman's voice emerges, bright and practical, teaching commands in crisp syllables. Heal, stay, protect him. It's the voice of his late wife, recorded years before Rex ever learned obedience. The sound folds the air into memory's shape. Rex lifts his head, ears rotating toward the familiar echo. Henry sits very still, fingers interlaced, the lesson washing over both of them like an unfinished prayer. The tape clicks, repeats, distorts. Her laughter breaks through the interference, brief and unguarded. Outside, the forest sighs, the wind aligning with the rhythm of that old recording. For the first time in weeks, Henry allows himself to close his eyes, not to sleep, but to listen completely.
At police headquarters, the fluorescent quiet of night shift hums. Detective Sarah Lang reviews a digital archive on her monitor. Interview tapes, photos, transcripts, already fading into bureaucracy. One video file remains unopened. She clicks it. Miles Dorn's confession, recorded before his transfer. The man on screen speaks without remorse, describing sabotage as strategy, testing human routine as experiment. Predict the honest ones, he says, voice even, and you control everything else. Lang pauses the playback on his half-smile. Behind him, the blurred shape of Clara Voss passes, detached, already forgetting him. The timeline aligns with Henry's recollections too neatly. Lang notes it all, though she knows the case is complete. Outside her window, rain begins again, tapping the glass like a gentle accusation. She closes the file, the cursor blinking over an empty field labeled motive. In its silence, she hears a faint bark carried by distance or memory. She can't decide which.
Back at the cabin, the weather changes without warning. The wind tumbles through the forest in restless waves, pressing against the windows with curious insistence. Inside, Henry rises from his chair, sensing the shift the way animals sense tremors. The lamp flickers, then steadies. Rex stands alert, tail rigid, ears pricked toward the door. Beyond the glass, nothing visible, only mist thickening against the tree line. A low creak travels across the roof, wood answering wood. Henry moves to the porch, the floorboards sighing beneath his weight. The air smells of wet bark and electricity. He waits, listening, but the sound that follows isn't wind, is the soft, metallic jingle of a chain, precise and familiar, coming from nowhere at all. Rex's head tilts, eyes bright, fixed on the darkness beyond the steps. The noise fades, replaced by rain's calm percussion. The forest resumes its breath as if the interruption never happened. Midnight holds the world in suspension. The lamp inside the cabin flickers twice and dies, leaving only moonlight in its place. Henry sits by the window, the room pale and weightless. Outside, fog smothers the clearing. Every sound travels slower. Rex lies curled near the hearth, asleep but dreaming, the twitch of paws painting invisible lines through air. On the far side of the field, the old runway glimmers faintly where dew collects, its lights long dismantled, yet somehow alive in reflection. Henry's gaze drifts there, unblinking, as though expecting motion. Then, just for a breath, the mist parts, a line of phantom beacons igniting one after another, tracing the path they once walked. Light without source, memory without mercy. It lasts 3 heartbeats, no more. When darkness returns, he exhales slowly, unsure whether to believe. The clock on the wall resumes its quiet tick, counting what memory refuses to release.
In the city, the world forgets faster. Case files thin into summaries. Photographs fade under fluorescent hum. Detective Sarah Lang sits alone in the evidence room, its metallic smell echoing through another unslept night. She signs the final closure sheet. Cole, Henry, incident resolved. A single page to contain years of calculation, pain, and silence. The forms vanish into archive boxes stacked like unmarked graves. Before sealing the lid, Lang hesitates, slipping one photograph back out, the image of Rex K9 mid-leap, all muscle and devotion, teeth bared against inevitability. She pins it to her board, not for proof, but reminder. Outside, dawn begins its colorless rehearsal, light spreading through narrow windows like diluted forgiveness. Somewhere beyond the city's edge, a dog's bark filters through the traffic hiss, too faint to trace. Lang freezes, half-smile forming, unsure if it's memory or world answering back. She lets the sound fade and files the rest. Morning in the forest breaks soft,
a pale sieve of light through cloud and pine. Henry Cole's cabin sits in that hush where days are indistinguishable. The kettle hums, the wood stove breathes. Rex K9 lies on the rug, as still as if listening to the trees think. Henry polishes the dog's brass collar, thumb smoothing across engraved letters dulled by weather. He sets it beside the briefcase on the table, 2 reliquaries, one for loyalty, one for consequence. The radio murmurs static that drifts into a faint melody before losing signal again. Coffee steam rises in thin ribbons, wrapping him in its warmth. Through the window, mist curls low, stitching itself between trunks. The air feels lighter now, emptied of questions. Henry leans back, the chair's creak blending with the stove's sigh. Survival has reduced itself to maintenance. Fire, warmth, silence. He can live with that. He already does.
Afternoon slides into gray drizzle. The trees lean with the wind's tired rhythm, branches drawing uncertain gestures across the cabin roof. Henry steps outside, mug in hand, watching droplets flatten against the railing. The forest smells metallic, clean, like the hour before thunder. Rex pads to his side, shaking rain from his coat, eyes fixed on the clearing. Somewhere far off between gusts comes a sound. One bark, crisp, distant, answered by none. Henry's spine tightens. He sets the mug down, listens again. Silence, then another. Fainter echo, more memory than noise. Rex's ears lift, but he remains still, breathing in sync with his owner. The wind turns colder, carrying the scent of asphalt and jet fuel from a direction that shouldn't exist here. Henry closes his eyes and lets it pass. When he opens them, the field is empty, the sound gone, but his heart keeps the rhythm as if it continues elsewhere. Night returns as a montage. In Henry's mind, fragments align without order. The vault's spark, the snake's coil, the woman in red lifting her hand through fog, Rex's silhouette against jet light. Each moment flickers and dissolves, refracting like old film caught in a projector loop. He sees patterns now where chaos once lived, circles of decision closing around him, each act feeding the next. The runway, the vault, the forest, they share a single breath, the same hum that moves through metal and muscle alike. He stands by the window, watching lightning stitch the horizon. For an instant, the reflection merges, his face beside Rex's, equal halves of endurance. The storm outside grows into pulse and memory, one endless edit of cause and consequence. When the light fades, only their shadows remain, still facing the window, outlined by the faint afterglow of lives that understood loyalty better than survival.
Dawn again, thin, forgiving, weightless. The storm has washed color back into the world. The air tastes of minerals and pine. Henry wakes before the light fully arrives, the kind of waking that feels chosen. Rex lies at his feet, breath deep and even, dreaming of open ground. Henry moves quietly, opens the door to the porch, and steps into the gentle chill. The forest glistens as if freshly invented. Down in the valley, fog settles low, soft as linen. He closes his eyes, and in the hush between bird calls, imagines footsteps, not threat this time, but return. The feeling passes like the wind, real while it lasts. Inside, the radio catches a stray broadcast, an old weather report fading mid-sentence. Henry pours water into the kettle, the day resuming its pattern. Routine again, yes, but this one is earned, carved from all that nearly ended. The silence it leaves is peace, not absence. The day grows clearer as if the world has forgiven itself overnight. Henry Cole sits by the window with the morning sun across his hands, the cabin still carrying the scent of rain-soaked pine. The fields below shimmer faintly,
each blade tipped with dew reflecting the past in 1,000 fragments. Rex Canine lies near the door, eyes following dust motes adrift in light. The briefcase rests beneath the table, its metal dull now, emptied of weight and meaning. Outside, the remnants of the runway are visible only when fog thins, a ghost path leading nowhere. Henry watches it like one might watch a wound slowly turn to scar. The world hums with quiet industry, birds stitching distance, wind tuning branches. He feels no need for movement. Time itself seems to pause, holding him in its palm, the way memory sometimes does when it finally stops demanding an answer.
Twilight bends the edges of everything. Shadows lengthen into recognition. Inside the cabin, lamplight sways with the breathing of the fire. Henry sits reading an old ledger whose pages no longer matter, familiar handwriting from a life when numbers were truth. The pages flutter with each draft that slips under the door, and for a moment he imagines the movement as conversation, the past still trying to speak, the present politely listening. Outside, crickets begin their mechanical hymn. The air tastes of wood smoke and sleep. On the wall, the clock's pendulum swings at a patient rhythm, the same tempo as Rex's breath. Henry closes the book, sets it aside, and leans back in the chair. For the first time, silence feels occupied, not emptiness, but presence spread thin through air. He lets it stay, an unseen companion, one more loyal constant in a world rebuilt on ghosts. Morning returns in soft gray tones. The forest is damp, the porch glistening, each step creaking under dew. Henry moves slowly through the small house, collecting small chores, a log added to the stove, a cup rinsed, a window latched. Every motion feels ritualistic, a prayer and muscle memory. When he opens the door, mist curls inside, cool and dense. The collar and briefcase rest side by side on the table, their metals catching equal light. He hesitates, then lifts the collar, presses it once to his chest before hanging it on a hook by the window. Outside, the field waits, indifferent, endless. From somewhere far off, maybe the airport, maybe imagination, a faint echo rolls through the valley, the hum of an engine long grounded. Rex looks up, eyes reflecting the sound. Henry smiles faintly, unsure which of them heard it first. Then the mist thickens, hiding everything equally.
Beyond the valley, Detective Sarah Lang drives the perimeter road for no official reason. The case has been closed, yet she finds herself drawn to the airfield's perimeter fence. The asphalt still bears faint burn marks from that night, almost erased by rain. She kills the engine, steps out, and stands in the slow-moving fog. Her breath mixes with it, indistinguishable. For a while, she hears nothing. Then, from the tree line beyond the tarmac, a sound, a bark, clear and brief, followed by silence so total it rings. Lang freezes, then half smiles, unsure if the fog played ventriloquist. The runway lights remain dead, but something glows faintly where they used to be, pulsing once, twice, then fading. She stands there longer than needed, not recording anything, simply letting belief hang where evidence cannot reach. The wind lifts, the fog drifts, and the sound does not return. Still, she leaves convinced it was real. Evening again, quiet and without agenda. The cabin windows glow amber against the approaching blue of night. Henry sits on the porch, the world arranged in equilibrium. Forest, wind, silence, breath. Rex Canine lies at his feet, older now, eyes reflecting the soft tremor of lantern light. Across the valley, fog gathers, and within it, a single beam of phantom runway light flickers alive, steady, patient, unashamed of its repetition. Henry watches it the way one watches memory, not to solve it,
but to honor its persistence. The air is cool, edged with pine and thyme. Somewhere, an owl calls once, a punctuation mark. Henry exhales, slow, complete. The light across the valley pulses one last time, then fades to nothing. Darkness folds in, gentle, final. Inside the cabin, the clock continues its patient count. Outside, only the rhythm of breathing remains. Man and hound, steady against the silence of the world.